Ethan had never seen a palace like this before. It floated in the void of space like a giant jewel, bathed in soft blue light from the nearby twin stars. The walls shimmered with metal that looked alive, bending and twisting in patterns that made him dizzy if he stared too long. He had been chosen as one of the few humans allowed to visit this alien kingdom, a rare privilege that came with a heavy weight. He adjusted his uniform and took a deep breath. Humans were known in some parts of the galaxy for their curiosity and daring, but also for their naivety. He was determined not to prove the latter. He stepped through the massive doors into the palace's central hall. The room was enormous. Its ceiling was so high it seemed to touch the stars outside. Alien courtiers floated on platforms, their bodies slender and elegant, with skin that changed color slightly depending on their mood. Ethan could feel their eyes on him immediately. Whispers passed through the crowd. They were not used to seeing a human up close, much less in the heart of their royal palace. At the far end of the hall, seated on a throne that seemed carved from living crystal, was Princess Valera. She had an aura of authority that made the room seem smaller, as if her presence alone commanded attention. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, studied Ethan like a scientist examining an unknown specimen. Ethan walked forward slowly, trying to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. He had come with a clear purpose, to present an idea that could help both humans and aliens. But now, standing here, surrounded by beings who seemed centuries ahead of him in knowledge, he wondered if he had overestimated his own courage. "Welcome, human." Valera's voice echoed through the hall. It was smooth and cold, yet carried a power that made everyone in the room silent. "I hear you have something remarkable to share." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Princess Valera. I believe humans have developed a system that can improve energy efficiency for interstellar travel. It's simple in concept but effective in practice." Valera's eyes narrowed. She leaned forward slightly on her throne. "A human thinks they can teach me about technology? How amusing." Her tone carried the faintest hint of laughter, enough to ripple through the crowd. Ethan held his ground. "I do not seek to teach, Princess. I only wish to demonstrate." A murmur went through the courtiers. Demonstration was fine, but humans rarely impressed the alien royals. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had studied the system for years, tested it under extreme conditions, and it had worked. But here, in front of a kingdom that had seen wonders he could barely imagine, he feared it might seem insignificant. Valera gestured sharply. "Very well. Show us, human." Ethan activated his device. It was a small, metallic cube that hummed softly, glowing with a blue light. He explained how it could optimize energy flows in starships, reduce waste, and even repair minor damage during long journeys. His voice was steady, each word measured. For a moment, the hall was silent. Then Valera's lips curved into a mocking smile. "You call this remarkable? A glowing box with some wires inside? This is your human ingenuity?" She laughed, a sound that rang like glass breaking. The courtiers joined in, some openly, some hiding their amusement behind polite gestures. Ethan felt a heat rise to his face, but he did not respond with anger. He had learned long ago that reaction could be used against you. Instead, he held his silence. His mind raced not with vengeance, but with understanding. This was not about the technology. This was about perception. Valera's laughter echoed again. "I have seen humans run, stumble, and fail. And yet here you are, pretending you are worthy of attention. How quaint." Ethan lowered his device slowly, keeping his hands visible. He said nothing. He did not apologize, and he did not argue. He simply let the moment pass. There was power in silence, he reminded himself, even if the court could not see it yet. The princess waved her hand dismissively. "Enough. Take your device and leave, human. We have no more time for childish amusements." Ethan nodded once, his face calm, though inside he felt the sting of humiliation. He turned and walked out of the hall, the eyes of the alien court following him. Whispers followed him down the corridors. He could hear the faintest chuckle as he passed under the floating platforms of the courtiers. Outside, in the observation deck overlooking the stars, Ethan paused. He looked at the infinite galaxy stretching before him, glittering with the light of billions of stars. The humiliation he felt was heavy, but it was not defeat. No, defeat came from giving up, and he had no intention of doing that. He took out a small datapad and began noting every flaw in his demonstration, every possible improvement, every step he could take to make his idea irrefutable. He would learn from this. He would grow. And one day, he would return not as a visitor, but as someone whose work could not be ignored. Back in the palace, Princess Valera leaned back in her throne, satisfied. She had shown a human his place, and she had enjoyed every moment. Yet something about the human's silence lingered in her mind. It was strange. Humans were talkative, defensive, emotional. And this one, he had none of that. He had left without protest, without pleading, without fear. Curious, she murmured to herself. Why did he not cry or beg or argue? What is he hiding? The courtiers, oblivious to the princess's rare intrigue, continued their chatter. The human had been humiliated. That was all. But Ethan's departure was only the beginning. In the years to come, he would quietly study alien systems, travel to distant worlds, and learn from civilizations that span the galaxy. He would gain knowledge, allies, and skills that no court had ever imagined a human could possess. For now, though, he simply looked at the stars. Each one was a possibility, each one a chance to prove that humans could endure, could innovate, and could rise above ridicule. His silence was not weakness. It was patience. And patience, he knew, was a weapon far sharper than any sword. He whispered to himself, not for anyone else to hear, not today, but someday they will understand. The stars outside seemed to shimmer in agreement, as if the universe itself recognized the quiet determination of a human who refused to be broken. And so, Ethan left the palace behind, not defeated, but inspired. The memory of Princess Valera's laughter would remain, but it would not define him. Instead, it would fuel the fire that would drive him across galaxies, shaping a future that the alien royal could never have imagined. He did not know yet how long it would take. 27 years? Perhaps more. But he knew one truth. The echo of his silence would speak louder than any words ever could. After leaving the alien palace, Ethan did not return to Earth immediately. Instead, he boarded his small but sturdy exploration vessel and set course for the unknown regions of the galaxy. He had one goal: to learn, to grow, and to prove, not through words, but through actions, that humans were capable of more than the alien royals could imagine. His first stop was a distant system on the edge of known space. The planet was harsh, with jagged mountains and violent storms, but it held something rare: in an abandoned alien research station. Inside, Ethan discovered libraries of knowledge and incomplete experiments, the work of civilizations long gone. He studied every detail, learning alien technologies, energy systems, and transportation networks. He experimented, failed, and tried again, never losing patience. 4 years. He traveled from planet to planet. Each civilization he visited offered something new: a unique power source, a strategy for survival in extreme conditions, or insights into artificial intelligence. Humans were rare, and in some places, unwelcome. Yet Ethan's quiet presence and willingness to learn won him allies. Some aliens began to respect the human who arrived not with demands, but with curiosity and determination. Despite the progress, he never forgot Princess Valera's laughter. It haunted him at times, not as a source of anger, but as a reminder of what he wanted to accomplish. Every challenge he faced reminded him that ridicule could only touch someone who gave it power. He chose not to give it any. One day, on a small icy planet far from the core worlds, Ethan discovered a group of alien engineers trapped by a collapsing energy facility. Without hesitation, he entered the unstable structure. Using his knowledge of alien systems and his human intuition, he stabilized the facility and saved the engineers. They were astonished. They had never seen a human operate with such precision, bravery, and intelligence. Word of Ethan's accomplishments began to spread, quietly at first. He never sought recognition, and he rarely stayed long in one place. His goal was not fame, it was preparation. He learned leadership, negotiation, and the subtle art of influence. Through discreet interventions, he prevented wars, stabilized unstable planets, and solved crises that many alien civilizations had considered unsolvable. Yet, he remained silent about his human origins in some regions. Many assumed he was an alien, perhaps a prodigy from an unknown species. The contrast between the weak, naive human Valeera had mocked and the capable, respected figure now moving through the galaxy could not have been more striking. In the meantime, back on Valeera's homeworld, the princess's court continued to thrive. They had little reason to think about the human they had mocked so long ago. She herself had grown, overseeing her kingdom with intelligence and skill. But deep down, a small memory lingered of the quiet human who had not fought back, who had accepted humiliation without losing dignity. She did not realize that this memory would one day return to challenge her sense of superiority. Ethan's journey was not without danger. Some civilizations feared humans and attacked him on sight. Pirates and mercenaries attempted to steal his discoveries. In each case, his calm, clever thinking allowed him to escape and even turned the situation to his advantage. On one planet, he used alien holographic technology to create decoys of himself, confusing an entire fleet until they fled in panic. On another, he improvised an energy shield from local materials to protect a village from a volcanic eruption. Each success, no matter how small, was a building block. Over the years, he accumulated allies, beings of incredible skill and intelligence who respected his judgment and his calm demeanor. Unlike the alien royal court, they did not judge him for being human. They valued results, courage, and wisdom. Ethan also began to develop technology of his own. Small, clever devices that improved communication across light years, portable energy systems, and defensive tools that relied on creativity rather than brute force. All of it was designed to prepare him for the day he would return to Valeera's kingdom, not as a visitor, but as someone whose expertise could not be ignored. Despite the years and the distances, Ethan never let hubris creep in. He remained grounded, focused on learning and improving. He understood that knowledge alone was not enough. Wisdom, patience, and strategy were just as important. Every alien he met became a lesson in diplomacy, survival, and leadership. One quiet moment, on a small moon orbiting a gas giant, Ethan looked out at the swirling storms below. He remembered the day he had been laughed at, the cold dismissal of Princess Valeera, and he smiled faintly, not from revenge, but from understanding. She had not seen what humans were capable of. She had judged without knowing. This will change, he whispered to himself. One day, they will see. By the end of his 20th year away from the palace, Ethan had become a force in the galaxy. He was still human, but humans were no longer underestimated. His innovations were saving lives, his strategies were resolving conflicts, and his presence inspired others to believe that humans could do the impossible. Stories of the quiet human spread. Some called him a ghost, appearing where needed and vanishing before anyone could thank him. Others spoke of him as a legend, a human who could rival entire alien civilizations in intellect and bravery. And yet, he remained silent about his past, never boasting about his victories, never seeking fame or glory. He even began mentoring young beings, both human and alien, teaching them not through lectures, but through example. Patience, careful observation, problem-solving, and humility became his lessons. He showed them that being underestimated could be a strength, that silence and thought often spoke louder than words, and that courage came from knowing when to act and when to wait. Meanwhile, the princess remained unaware of the man's rise. Her life was filled with court duties, politics, and the pressures of leadership. She did not expect to hear of Ethan again. Humans were still rare, and she assumed that the young man she mocked had faded into obscurity, as so many humans did in her eyes. But Ethan's work was far from over. The galaxy had become his classroom, and every challenge had prepared him for the day he would return. He had learned that patience was not just waiting, it was preparation. Every system he studied, every device he improved, every alliance he formed, was a step toward the moment when his silence would finally echo. That moment was still years away, but when it arrived, the galaxy itself would take notice. The human once ridiculed would no longer be ignored. The lessons learned in quiet corners of distant systems. The knowledge gained through tireless exploration. The skills honed in countless crises all would converge in a way that even the most powerful aliens could not anticipate. For now, Ethan continued his travels. Each star system was a test, each civilization a teacher. His reputation grew silently, and his influence spread subtly. Yet his purpose remained the same, to prove that humanity, underestimated and dismissed, could rise above ridicule and shape the future of the galaxy. And somewhere deep in the back of his mind, the memory of Princess Valera's laughter served as a quiet reminder, not of humiliation, but of motivation. It fueled his desire to prepare, to learn, and to ensure that when the time came, his silence would speak louder than any words, and his achievements would leave a mark that no one could erase. Ethan's journey had become more than survival or curiosity. It had become a testament to human potential, the quiet, resilient, clever spirit that could thrive where others doubted. And as he looked out across the endless expanse of stars, he knew that one day, all the knowledge, patience, and skill he had accumulated would converge in a moment of undeniable impact. For now, he was still just a traveler, a student of the galaxy. But the galaxy itself was taking note, quietly recording the rise of a human who would one day change the course of its history. Ethan smiled faintly as he set a new course toward the next system. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and wonders, and he was ready for all of it. Silence had been his choice, patience his ally, and preparation his weapon. And one day, when he returned to the palace where he had been mocked, all of it would matter. The human who had been laughed at 27 years ago was no longer the same. He was stronger, wiser, and unstoppable in ways no alien royal could yet imagine. And so, silently, he continued his journey, readying himself for the day when the echo of his silence would finally be heard. 27 years had passed since Ethan had walked out of Princess Valera's palace, humiliated yet determined. In all that time, he had traveled across countless star systems, learned from alien civilizations, and quietly built a reputation that spanned the galaxy. Humans were no longer underestimated in distant worlds, thanks in no small part to his work. And now, the time had come to return. Ethan's vessel approached the system of Valera's kingdom. From space, the planet looked familiar yet different. The cities gleamed with new technology, and energy fields shimmered in ways that spoke of both advancement and wealth. The palace still floated in the heart of the capital, grander than ever, a symbol of the princess's power. Yet Ethan's focus was not on admiration. He had come not as a visitor seeking approval, but as a prepared human capable of making a real difference. He had heard of a new crisis, a dangerous energy surge, threatening the stability of Valera's entire system. No alien technology alone could contain it. As he entered the palace, the corridors were the same in shape, yet now alien guards and courtiers regarded him with curiosity rather than amusement. Whispers ran through the halls. The human. Is he the one? Ethan ignored them, moving with calm confidence. He had no need to announce his achievements. His presence spoke for itself. Finally, he reached the grand hall. Princess Valera sat on her throne, her posture regal, her eyes sharp and alert. She noticed him immediately. For the first time in years, her court was silent, waiting. Human, Valera said, her voice steady but carrying a hint of something unfamiliar, curiosity, perhaps, or unease. You return. Ethan inclined his head slightly. Princess Valera, I am here to help. Her lips pressed together. She did not laugh. She remembered the young human she had mocked decades ago. Now, he seemed calm, confident, and capable. Something in her chest tightened, a feeling she had not expected. The crisis was urgent. A massive energy reactor at the heart of the system was destabilizing, threatening to explode and destroy the surrounding planets. Valera had deployed her best engineers and fleet, yet none could contain the surge. Panic rippled through the court. Ethan stepped forward. He examined the schematics with careful eyes, moving among alien scientists who watched him with cautious hope. He did not boast, did not demand respect. He simply began working, suggesting modifications. applying techniques he had developed over decades, and combining human intuition with alien technology. The energy readings were overwhelming, chaotic, and dangerous. Yet Ethan remained focused. He instructed teams calmly, showing them how to redirect energy flows, stabilize power conduits, and shield vulnerable areas. His voice was quiet, measured, but carried authority born of experience. Princess Valera observed in silence. The human who had once been ridiculed was now orchestrating a solution that no alien mind in her court had conceived. Her pride wrestled with disbelief. She wanted to interrupt, to remind him that he was still human, limited, infallible. But as she watched, it became clear. This human was extraordinary. Hours passed. The palace and the entire system held their collective breath as Ethan worked tirelessly. Energy pulses surged dangerously. Systems failed and recovered. Alarms rang and silenced. The human never faltered. His calm focus inspired those around him, guiding alien engineers and fleets with precision. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the energy surge stabilized. The reactors were safe, the planet secure. A collective sigh of relief spread through the court, and the palace erupted in cautious applause. Yet Ethan remained quiet, simply stepping back, surveying the results of his work. Valera rose from her throne. Her expression was unreadable, yet her eyes betrayed something she had not felt in years: respect. She approached him, walking slowly as if weighing every step. "You saved my system," she said finally. "I underestimated you." Ethan inclined his head. "I did not come to prove anything to you, Princess. I came to help." Her surprise was evident. She had expected pride, boasting, or challenge. Instead, the human spoke with humility, and yet the impact of his actions was undeniable. The courtiers whispered among themselves. Some were incredulous. "Is this the same human we mocked? He looks different." "He is extraordinary." Valera ignored them. Her focus was on Ethan. "You have grown far beyond what I imagined. Tell me, how did you gain such skill?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Years of learning, observation, and patience. I listened when others spoke. I watched when others acted, and I prepared for this moment." Her mind raced. 27 years of preparation. A human had quietly traversed the galaxy, mastered technology and strategy, and returned when it mattered most. She had mocked him, and yet he had outshone everyone in her court without anger, without revenge, only with calm determination. "You are not the human I remember," she admitted. "You are remarkable." Ethan's eyes softened. "Humans are capable of more than many believe. We adapt, we endure, we learn. Sometimes silence is louder than words." Valera's pride struggled against her astonishment. She had always believed that humans were limited, fragile, and impulsive. Yet here was proof, undeniable, that they could match or even surpass the best of her people in intelligence, creativity, and courage. The crisis resolved. Ethan remained in the palace for several days, advising on further improvements and helping the engineers implement long-term safeguards. He did not demand recognition. He did not flaunt his accomplishments. He acted with precision, care, and integrity, showing the court that humans could lead through action rather than status or title. During that time, Valera observed him closely. She noted how he treated every alien, regardless of rank, with respect, how he solved problems with creativity rather than force, how he remained calm under pressure, never yielding to panic or frustration. She realized that this human possessed qualities her royal advisors lacked: qualities that could shape the future of civilizations. One evening, as the twin stars set outside the palace windows, Valera approached Ethan alone. "You have changed everything I thought I knew," she admitted quietly. "I thought humans were weak, incapable of great things. I was wrong. You embody qualities we often lack." Ethan regarded her calmly. "The galaxy is vast, Princess. Strength is not only measured in technology or power. It is measured in patience, learning, and endurance. Humans have thrived in impossible conditions because we endure and adapt. Sometimes the quietest among us are the strongest." Valera nodded slowly. For the first time in decades, she felt humbled not by force, but by wisdom and action. The human she had once mocked had become a figure she could neither dismiss nor underestimate. By the end of his visit, Ethan had secured lasting alliances between humans and alien civilizations, sharing knowledge, strategies, and innovations that would benefit the galaxy for generations. He had returned not for revenge, not for recognition, but to make a meaningful difference. And in doing so, he had permanently reshaped the perception of humans among the stars. As he prepared to leave the palace, Valera approached him one last time. Her expression was soft but serious. "You have proven much more than I could imagine. Perhaps one day you will teach me more about humans." Ethan smiled faintly. "I already have, Princess. Sometimes the lesson is not in what is said, but in what is done." And with that, he departed, leaving behind a palace, a kingdom, and a princess forever changed. The echo of his silence, the years of preparation, and the quiet power of a determined human had left an indelible mark that would resonate through time, reminding all who witnessed it that humanity, underestimated and mocked, could rise to greatness in ways the galaxy would never forget. Ethan looked back one last time at the palace, its spires glinting in the starlight. He smiled, not out of pride, but from understanding. The silence of 27 years had spoken, and it had been heard loud and clear. The galaxy was listening, and humanity's place among the stars had been secured. Ethan's work in Princess Valera's system had ended, yet his presence left a lasting impression. The energy crisis had been averted, alien engineers had learned new methods, and the kingdoms of nearby systems had begun sharing knowledge that would stabilize entire regions. His return had been brief, but its impact would echo across the galaxy for decades. As he departed the palace once more, Valera watched him leave. She could not hide her curiosity or the new respect she felt. The human she had mocked 27 years ago had grown into a figure of immense capability and quiet authority. She reflected on her arrogance back then, the laughter that had seemed so satisfying, and she felt a twinge of regret, not for her actions, but for having underestimated humans and Ethan in particular. Ethan returned to his own vessel, quietly charting a course for distant worlds. He did not seek reward or recognition, but he did take a moment to consider the journey he had undertaken. From a young human laughed at in a grand alien palace to a figure whose ideas and actions had reshaped entire systems, he understood the power of patience, learning, and silence. In the weeks that followed, stories of his achievements began spreading naturally. Aliens who had worked alongside him shared accounts of his skill, his calm under pressure, and the remarkable solutions he had devised. Some called him a genius, others a legend, but all agreed on one thing: he was human, and he had achieved what few could. Back on his homeworld, humans listened to these tales with awe. Ethan had become more than an explorer. He was a symbol that even a species once underestimated could rise, innovate, and lead. Young humans across planets found hope in his story. If a single human could impact the galaxy in such ways, what might they achieve with courage and determination? Meanwhile, Princess Valera began reflecting on her own kingdom. She realized that the lessons Ethan had silently taught her were not only technical, but philosophical. Humans, she understood now, were capable of endurance, creativity, and collaboration that alien civilizations often overlooked. She began changing her approach to leadership, encouraging innovation and humility, realizing that respect must be earned and not assumed. Ethan did not return to the palace immediately, but he maintained quiet contact with several of Valera's engineers and allies. He shared knowledge and advice without seeking credit. His influence spread like a gentle current, shaping civilizations quietly, proving that one determined human could alter the course of the galaxy. Over time, Valera found herself thinking of Ethan not as a human to mock, but as a teacher in his own right. She studied his methods, his calm decisions, and the way he inspired respect without seeking it. She even began applying some of his techniques in governance, realizing that patience, observation, and humility could often achieve more than force or decree. In distant worlds, Ethan continued his work. He guided struggling civilizations, prevented disasters, and introduced methods of energy management, communication, and diplomacy. Yet he remained invisible in the sense that he never sought fame. He believed that actions, not words, were the true measure of greatness. His silence was not emptiness. It was preparation, focus, and patience. One day, while observing a young star cluster from the observation deck of his ship, Ethan reflected on the past 27 years. Every planet he had visited, every challenge he had faced, and every life he had touched had contributed to a larger vision. He had endured ridicule, doubt, and isolation, but he had never faltered. He had chosen to turn humiliation into motivation and silence into power. Ethan smiled faintly as he recalled that day in the palace. Princess Valera's laughter had once seemed like a wound, but now it was a reminder of what he had overcome. That single moment had sparked a journey that had transformed not only him, but the perception of humans across countless civilizations. Back in Valera's kingdom, she convened her advisors. The energy crisis was long solved, but its lessons lingered. She spoke of Ethan, cautiously at first, acknowledging the importance of humility, collaboration, and patience. Slowly, she began advocating for policies that reflected his influence. Alien societies that once dismissed humans now viewed them with respect and curiosity. Ethan's influence was not limited to technology and strategy. It had changed perspectives. Humans, once underestimated, were now seen as resilient, inventive, and capable of extraordinary feats. Stories of his achievements travel across the stars, inspiring hope and admiration. Young humans trained in engineering, strategy, and diplomacy took courage from his example, knowing that even in silence, their efforts could echo across galaxies. Meanwhile, Valera continued to study the human who had quietly reshaped her perception of the galaxy. She recognized that true strength did not always come from power, weapons, or status. It came from endurance, intelligence, and the ability to act when it mattered most. She realized that she had learned more from his silence than from any lecture or demonstration in her entire court. One evening, in a quiet room within the palace, Valera looked out at the stars. She thought of Ethan's departure and the mark he had left not in monuments or titles, but in actions and inspiration. She whispered to herself, "The human. He taught me without words." His silence. It echoes. Far away, Ethan gazed at a nebula of vibrant colors. He considered the galaxies he had yet to explore, the civilizations that might need guidance, and the crises that only humans, with their adaptability and creativity, could address. He was not a hero seeking recognition. He was a human moving through the galaxy, prepared to act when it mattered most. The galaxy itself seemed to recognize his presence. Aliens he had helped and humans inspired by his work began collaborating, building systems of knowledge, trade, and diplomacy that spanned star systems. Ethan's quiet influence had sparked a movement proof that one determined individual could ignite change that reverberated across civilizations. Years later, even Valera's children and successors learned of Ethan's deeds. His story became legend, but more than that, it became a standard. Humans could endure, innovate, and rise above ridicule. His silent journey had rewritten perceptions, showing that intelligence, patience, and courage were universal languages understood across species. Ethan, now older and wiser, continued his exploration. He visited distant planets, shared knowledge, and guided civilizations through crises. Each action, though quiet, reinforced the message he had lived by for decades. Humans, underestimated and often mocked, could achieve greatness through patience, resilience, and ingenuity. He knew his silence had been his greatest weapon. It had protected him from impulsive reactions, allowed him to observe, learn, and prepare. And in the end, it had spoken louder than any words ever could. Every planet he had touched, every civilization he had influenced, every life he had saved carried a part of his legacy. Back on Valera's kingdom, the princess often thought of him. She had once mocked a young human without understanding him. Now, decades later, she understood the depth of his wisdom and patience. She realized that her lesson was simple yet profound. underestimate humans at your peril. Ethan's stories spread quietly through whispers, reports, and tales of action. He never sought fame, but he inspired millions. Humans were no longer considered weak or naive. They were recognized as capable, clever, and resilient. And all of it stemmed from one human's choice to endure humiliation with dignity and to act with patience over decades. The echo of Ethan's silence was now a force that resonated throughout the galaxy. It had taught kings, princesses, engineers, and explorers alike that greatness was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, patient, and persistent. And when it finally acted, it left an impact that could not be ignored. As Ethan navigated his vessel among the stars, he looked back at the galaxy he had influenced. He smiled faintly, knowing that the journey he had begun all those years ago, driven by a single moment of ridicule, had become a legacy that would outlast generations. And somewhere in the palace of Princess Valera, she gazed at the stars and whispered softly, "The human." He was never silent. His silence, it spoke louder than any words ever could. Ethan's journey was far from over. There were still worlds to explore, challenges to face, and knowledge to share. But he knew that one human's quiet determination had changed the galaxy forever. The laughter that once stung now served only as a reminder of how far he had come, and how enduring the human spirit could be. The echo of silence is patience. Courage and wisdom had become a lesson, a warning, and an inspiration. The galaxy would remember it. And humanity, once ridiculed and underestimated, had finally taken its place among the stars.